we are going to discuss a serious topic that might be triggering. So if you have a history with food eating disorder, or you're struggling with that, I just want to warn you, this could be maybe a good episode for you, but it could also be maybe triggering, and you should skip that. If you have serious eating disorder, if there's issues you deal with, please speak to a specialist, to a health specialist. Again, we are, very important to know, we are not experts. All right, hey, and welcome to another episode of No Boundaries, the podcast Mother and Daughter Edition, a podcast in which we, mother and daughter duo, have honest conversations, discuss controversial topics, while also exploring our bond. And I'm the mother, and my name is Anousha.
And I'm the daughter, and my name is Lulu.
So today we're going to talk about a subject that's really important to me, very personal topic for me, and it's about disordered eating and body politics. I think a lot of women suffer from disordered eating, and I know I suffered from it from childhood on, from a very, very young age, and it's almost ruined my life. And even if it didn't, ruin my life, it had a huge significance on my life. It's like the biggest thing in my life, even though I also have children, a marriage, and a career. But this has been the biggest issue in my whole life, and it took up so much time, so much space, so much energy, and I almost ruined myself.
And I feel like it still plays a role till this day.
Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. I think there's a really big difference now, and I'll talk about that.
Okay.
So, but it does always play a role. Yeah,
it's part of you almost.
Yeah, it's part of me, but I think there's a definite a big change, which we'll talk about, because that's something you don't see, but that's internalized. So that's interesting to discuss. Mm-hmm. So that's our topic of today. But before we do that, we're going to talk about our segment, the shout out and a shame.
So a quick shout out we want to do is a new movie, relatively new, called One of Them Days, which features SZA and Keke Palmer. It's a comedy, and it's a really typical family-friendly comedy film with the very cliche structure, but it's obviously all black characters, and it accurately represents a low-income black neighborhood without just relying on harmful stereotypes or trauma porn. So it was so refreshing, so much fun. Keke and SZA together were amazing. SZA's acting was super good, which I wasn't expecting because she's a singer and not an actress necessarily, but she was amazing. And I just had so much fun watching it, and I was literally laughing out loud while watching it, and it was super cute. So yeah, definitely 100% recommend. It's on Netflix now, which is why I want to shout it out, because a lot of people have Netflix. And One of Them Days is produced by Issa Rae. Very important.
Yes, female producer. And I think she also wrote it, at least
definitely
she's part
was
of the
involved.
writing team. Yeah, definitely involved. Incredible.
But yeah, our shame of the week will be that right now, specifically, it's just very hard to be an artist and to make a career as an artist. And that's for any kind of art that goes from dancing, acting, singing, filmmaking, painting,
Podcast making.
photography, podcast making. That's why you guys gotta subscribe. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
But it's very hard, and it's just getting harder with the years. But especially this year, it's very hard. And yeah, it doesn't need that much explanation. It's just, it sucks. It's hard, and we all gotta support each other and be happy with each other. And yeah, still do what you love to do. Don't let it stop you. You gotta do what makes you happy.
Yes, gotta do what makes you happy. And art is so important culturally. It's so important for the whole world, for life, and
to evolve as a community, as a society, to open your mind, to understand one another. And it's an easier way to feel empathy for other people. And empathy is a very important trait to have. So yeah, it's hard out here, but we're gonna keep doing our thing. And if that means working side jobs, but then you can still have at least 1 hour a week to do your art, so be it. Don't give up.
At least that you know what you're doing it for. And that's why I'm so proud of you, that you're not only studying film, but also studying psychology as well. And you're going to do a double major in order to, be able to have the freedom to make the art you want to make.
While getting the bills paid.
And I did that too when I did my first, in the Netherlands, little solo show. I worked also as an actress in training, so in the daytime, so that I could afford to have a band. So I could pay a band and perform not on my own, but with a band. And that gave me so much joy, and also created a beautiful friendship with me and the band members. It was amazing, and it was worth it. So work in the daytime and then, perform at night.
Love it. See?
Yes.
All right, so now we're going to go back into our topic. And I think we should definitely start by identifying, as always. Well, first off, we're not professionals. So my mom has very first-hand experience, as she mentioned earlier, all throughout her life. So she's just going to be speaking about her experience, what worked for her, what didn't work for her. And we did some research as well, which we will be mentioning. But we're not professionals, we're not a doctor. So this is just us sharing our knowledge and our experiences. We should definitely identify eating disorders, because I think a lot of people get disordered eating and eating disorders mixed up. I know they sound very similar, but there is a huge difference.
Yeah, so disordered eating, eating disorder, it's a spectrum, right? And you can say that a lot of people suffer from disordered eating. Like, for instance, going on a diet, it's completely normalized, but that is a form of disordered eating. Skipping whole food groups.
Wait, so any form of a diet, like people who go on a diet when they go to the gym and they want to hit a protein goal, or people who just want to get fit or get healthy, you think any form of a diet would be disordered eating?
I mean, unless it's seriously for your health. For instance, you have a really high, doctor recommended because of high blood pressure, or, allergies or something. Yeah, serious food allergies. Yeah, no, then of course it's not disordered. But if it's sort of I'm going to go on a diet because I'm going on vacation in 2 weeks, and I'm just going to skip a whole food group, or I'm eating completely clean and I'm not eating, so when you have to think about it, when it's part of, of your day-to-day activities, it's part of disordered eating.
Wow, okay.
Because food should be, you're hungry, you eat something, you're satisfied, you stop eating. That's it. That's quote unquote.
And you shouldn't think about what you're actually eating.
No. Because if you listen to your body officially, right, you eat what's good for your body, you eat what's healthy, and when you're satisfied, you stop. You don't overeat, you don't, limit yourself, you don't, that's quote unquote, I mean, it's a spectrum, nothing is completely normal, but let's just know, for the sake of discussion, that's normal eating. Thinking about it, making rules, setting up, goals,
protein goals.
Just protein, or skipping a meal, or not eating after 6 p.m., not eating before 12 p.m., no fruit in combination, I don't eat fruit with whatever, with this kind of vegetable, then that's called disordered eating.
Which is interesting, because right now on TikTok, I've seen this very big trend happening, and it's this app, and you take a picture of every meal you eat, and it's in a circle shape, so it's a picture of your plate, and then it tells you based on the picture how much calories, how is it a good meal, okay meal, not a good meal, and then it gives you a total summary of the whole day of what you're consuming.
Wow.
And it's a big trend right now.
Oh, I'm
and
shocked.
This is based on a picture. You're not putting in this is a picture, and it just AI, I think, and it calculates a portion of it.
Oh.
And it's popular. And I went out with my friends yesterday, and they were all doing it.
Oh my God! Yeah. No, well, so you see, that's a form of normalized, commercialized, even disordered eating. So I think a lot of people will recognize that. Yeah. And then when it becomes an eating disorder is when the symptoms become even more severe, more restrictive, and also psychological effects. When you're afraid to eat certain things, when you're afraid to go out, you're afraid because that can trigger, for instance, binge eating or something. So it becomes an eating disorder when the symptoms become more severe, and when they have effect on your physical health and on your psychological health, in short. So when you become sick, when you can hardly get out of bed, when you, for instance, stop menstruating, when your blood pressure becomes really, really low or too high, or and also psychological effects. When you fear eating, when you fear going out, when you're afraid to leave the house, or you can only be with people because you're afraid, your eating will have an effect on your personal life. I'll explain all of that from my personal experience. Yeah, I was 10 years old. I was in a hospital. I was born with hip dysplasia, and I was operated on my hips when I was 10 years old. And I was in the hospital for 6 weeks, and I couldn't move. I was like literally, my legs were like in this construction that I couldn't hardly. I could only sit up and sleep on my back and nothing. And I'm a side sleeper, so it was a traumatic experience at 10 years old in a hospital, and not being able to move 6 weeks on my own. Yeah, that's when I started really numbing myself and also comforting myself with food to an extreme. It's always been part of my culture. My mom is Russian, so in Russia, food is love. You give food, you celebrate with food, you comfort with food, you eat when you're angry, you eat when you're happy. Food is a very big part of life and of love. But then it became like numbing and serious, and the nurses would tell me, a 10-year-old child, yeah, you better be careful because you are not moving, you're gonna gain a lot of weight. So that combines that toxic cycle of fear of food, but also needing it for comfort at 10 years old.
Wow.
That was the start.
Interesting. I didn't know that you I knew you had the surgery, but I never knew that you weren't able to move for 6 weeks.
No.
Wow. Okay. So you feel like up until then, there weren't, looking back now, before that, there weren't really any, red flags yet or early signs? It really started there?
Yeah, I mean, there were always really early signs because I was always body policed as a black child, as a mixed child in a white neighborhood. I grew up in a very big neighborhood. So from a very young age, people would comment on my body, that I was so muscly. I was, that I wasn't like a wavy thin. I was a very healthy, very wonderful body child. Nothing wrong with my body. But I was not a Dutch, wavy, ultra skinny, girl. So people would comment on my butt, people would comment on my legs, people would comment on my shoulders, people would comment even on my cheeks, on everything. So I was body police from a very young age. Had to show my butt. My mom would even, she didn't mean to do that, but look at her, Anousha's butt, it's so tight, it's so strong. And people would literally touch it. Family members, friends, as a joke, ooh, you can flip a coin off her butt, and then and I would lay on the couch, and people would slam my butt to feel how muscly it was.
That sounds so
ridiculous. Yeah.
Wrong and traumatizing.
Very wrong and traumatizing.
It's one thing if you're passing by, but you were laying down and posing so they could
touch my butt
of a child.
Literally flip a coin off my butt because it was so muscly. Yeah.
No, I think that's an important thing you mentioned for those listening, because two things, we grew up in the Netherlands, Amsterdam, both of us did, and I think two things that are really important is that the body standards over there are super different than here. Again, having a good body, it's a social construct, it's all made up, and it depends on whatever society you're in. And the fact that there's a different body, standard in each country or town, that just shows how, unreal and made up it is, because it really depends on where you are and how messed up and how and it's crazy to think so where we grew up, it's very the girls are supposed to be super skinny, tall, lanky, wavy, but big boobs. That's just it, and anything beyond that is considered fat. For example, me, I was the fattest girl in all of my friend groups in the Netherlands. And I've never felt like I was fat, alright? But I was the biggest one there. And I even remember early on in gym class, we would all have to sit on a bench and we're in shorts, and I could see how my legs were way bigger on the bench than all of the girls next to me. And I taught myself to sit like that so that it wouldn't spread all the way when you're sitting down. And that was normal, you know what I mean? I didn't even think of that. And there were it was just very, very different body standards. And then I moved to New York, where it's opposite. In my high school in New York specifically, people were really into curvy bodies and thick bodies and very feminine bodies, and my body was praised, as opposed to in the Netherlands where it was big and muscular, literally the same. And it's just so crazy to think too that how if you would have grown up here, how different you would have been treated and how that would have affected you. And that's just based on where you lived. That has nothing to do with your body or you. It's just that just shows how far it goes. So that's like my first take.
But I want to say something to that, but that's also very specific because you went to a specific school where a lot of Black and Latin kids went, right?
Yes.
If you'd have gone to like a white school in the Upper East Side, it would have been different. And even the same for me in Amsterdam, if we would have moved to the Zuidoost, it's a neighborhood where way more people of color live, my childhood also would have been completely different and my body. But I do want to say, if you look at the numbers, most kids of color are not even diagnosed when they have food issues. So it's also racialized that they just like to eat, as opposed to wait a minute, because of trauma, also kids of color can have certain body issues and food issues that are way like 3 times more likely to have binge eating kids of color in this society in America.
Because there's a big connection with like trauma and eating.
Yeah, and the value of lightness and color and how do you say colorism are completely combined. So Black bodies here, or bodies of color, are also being extremely policed. Of course, in their own society, they may be more safe in their own neighborhood, but as soon as you venture out, it starts. So that is also important to know.
Yeah, so food desert is a big issue. So basically when you have a city and you go to the outskirts of the city, which is the low income areas that are specifically like
designed that way. They're far from the city, and the city has all the grocery stores and all the healthy food options, so they're super far removed from that. Meanwhile, in their area, you'll literally see a McDonald's, a KFC, fast food on every single block, a deli on every single block, and those are also super cheap, and the grocery stores are expensive and far, and people have kids and families, they can't afford to travel that far. No. And the only thing near them is like literally Chinese food and fast food. That's it. Yeah, and also because of an economic construct, if you live in that neighborhood and you want to start a health store, try to get a bank loan, right? Because they say, this is a risky area, so we won't invest in this area. So that's also a very toxic, perpetuated economic cycle that keeps people in that same poverty and keeps people eating unhealthy. Because again, in this country, in the United States, it's cheaper, especially in this city, to go to a fast food chain restaurant than to buy healthy groceries. That's different still, as I know, in a lot of European countries. So food deserts are very important when it comes to like a lot of people of color dealing with obesity, basically. But back to our story, to the Netherlands. So first thing was like how different the norms are per country and society. But the second thing is important where you grew up is that in our culture, it's very normal to say things out loud to people without it being mean and offensive. And if you're offended, you're like a vibe killer and you're being like a negative Nancy. And like, just think of like, we've all seen like funny videos where, at Thanksgiving and that annoying auntie or grandma that like, it makes way too many comments that nobody wants to deal with. That's like every single Dutch person. And that's like normal. Kids, grown-ups, and grown-ups to kids, kids to grown-ups, students, friends, teachers. Like everyone. And that's a big thing, I think, for you growing up as well. Completely. And can you imagine if you're like one of the few kids of color, how it was like normal with everyone to joke about my butt or... And then also because you were the only person of color they were friends with, so it's also this thing where not only are you already standing out, they're also using my mom as their example of what Black people are like. And that's how people get boxed, because they only have my mom to like represent a group of people. So that really affected me in a very serious way, all of that combined, and then that operation and being on my own in that hospital and, all the pain that came with that. And my dad, who was in Cameroon, who was supposed to come, who didn't come, was also a very big disappointment for me. So that all accumulated in me literally developing, going from maybe disordered, weird childhood eating to a full-blown eating disorder by the age I was 12. 10 it started, but at 12, 13, I was very messed up. So there's a lot of like social factors that lead into trauma that get you to have issues with eating. But I'm wondering, do you also need to have some kind of like sensitivity in your brain to it already? Like, is it like it can happen to anyone, or is it like more similar to like depression or anxiety? Like, it's like you have something that I think it's a combination. Again, I'm not an expert, but my own personal analysis, just like for instance with alcohol, right? You have people who have literally a genetic disposition to become an alcoholic. So even the first drink they have, it's very dangerous, and they can, like, I've I've heard of actors, friends, literally became full-blown alcoholics by childhood because they loved it so much. So that is a genetic disposition. But if you drink every day, all the time, socially, if that's completely normal, you can also become an alcoholic slowly but surely. And I think it's the same with every addiction and also with the food eating disorder. Yeah, you can have a genetic disposition. There's links with OCD. There's even link and connection with being impulsive, impulsivity, ADHD sort of, right? So there can be a genetic disposition, but also if you are raised in a household where, for instance, your mother or another parent or your aunt, and how many women have already disordered eating, it's normal in the media, it's normal in school, it's normal everywhere around you, and it's being championed if you diet and if you eat less. Oh, she didn't finish her plate. And that's seen as a good thing, or as a good thing if you eat too much. Yeah, then you can also slide into it.
Yeah.
Because it's dopamine, right? It's about dopamine and endorphins. It's like chemical reactions that happen. So if I was very, very unhappy and I would numb myself with food, it would literally have a physical effect on me and also a psychological effect. I was always dieting. So I started dieting full time when we go to high school at a young age. So our middle school and high school is combined. So at 12, 13, you go to high school, big school, 6 years or 5 years or 4 years, lots of kids. I was one of the few kids of color again, different body. You're in puberty, bodies change. I was becoming a woman, getting curves, which I found horrific. And I became a full-blown dieter, binge eater. Dieter, binge eater. As a young girl growing up, I would go to school. I would be very unhappy and insecure. My body didn't understand the changes. Of course, I could talk to my mom a bit about it, but not everything. Plus, I'm a black woman, mixed race, but black woman, mixed race. So I couldn't relate to her body. I had a different body type. And I was insecure. I was tall. I was a tall girl. So I was very different. And I would come home from school. My mom was working, so I was home alone. And then I would go to the supermarket and buy snacks that I liked. And binge.
And this would be like whenever you felt bad about yourself.
Yeah, if something would have happened, like for instance...
I think like something small to just flip.
Something small or big, like a guy would say, like a boy would say to me, "You're fat." Like while I would walk past him, and I would be so ashamed, throw away my, because in the Netherlands you bring your lunch with you, or throw it away, not eat lunch, starve, then come home at 4 p.m. starving, go to the supermarket, buy snacks, binge, and then say I'm gonna go on a diet tomorrow, binge even more, skip dinner, and then binge alone in my room because my mom was watching TV after work. She was tired. So I get in that cycle of numbing myself, buying bad snacks, skipping dinner, my mom not really noticing that I eat. I would hide my food. I would put it to the side or put it in my mouth or put it in my lap, then throw it away in the bathroom, so as not to eat because, I ate so much, I ate so many snacks. Of course, then be hungry, doing homework. I danced, I went to act drama lessons. I was a really busy, teenager, of course, starving. And then buy snacks again at night with my own money, hiding it from my mom, eating it in my bed on my own.
And just constantly.
Constantly.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, that binge eating became so bad that at certain points I had to do something because I was dancing. I wanted to be an actress. And then it developed into bulimia, which means throwing up. And that started at about a little bit at 17, 18 and full blown when I lived on my own. So by 21, 22, I was a complete bulimic.
And it was like throwing up when you had these binge eating moments, or throwing up like anything you would eat?
Usually only when I had binges, but sometimes if I was unhappy, insecure, or afraid, going out to dinner with friends and eating a little bit too much or not skipping dessert, then I would have to find a way to get rid of it as soon as possible. In a restaurant.
And you would do it while you're still with your friends and you just sneak out.
Yeah, sneak out. You became really good at it, hiding it, masking it with chewing gum, whatever. And that was that moment when I studied in the United States in my 20s. And go to Dwayne Reed and literally pretend I was hosting a party, throwing a party.
Did you buy like red cups?
Yeah, buying red cups and two and potato, and then literally I can't even fathom it anymore. Like literally a whole cart of food, taking it with two big bags to my room on my own, sitting down on the floor
and finishing all the same night.
eating it all,
Like everything.
everything,
Wow.
and then throwing up, getting rid of it. Yeah, 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 and that was a toxic cycle. But I was going to school, studying, working as a waitress, working as a bartender, had my own little acting group, performing, doing auditions, working out religiously. I would go to the gym every day or jog. I mean, I literally, that all of that I was doing
You were
while
distracted.
having like this really, 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 really serious
And then people on the outside didn't
food
notice.
problem.
Yeah, I was wondering, did you ever have like friends or somebody being like, wait, like
Yes, of course.
I can tell.
Yes,
something's
maybe
up.
not that I was seriously bulimic, the extent, but that I had disordered eating. Yes, but a lot of my friends had disordered eating. My friends who I was in acting school with. I mean, this was the 90s. Heroin chic was the look.
Right.
So even all my white friends were they were literally all a size 0. And I was then, at my height, I'm 5'8", I was like a size 4'6", which was considered a big girl. So can you imagine? It was me with my size 4'6" with size 0 girls who were like 5'5". So I was a big giant. I felt like a big giant. So everybody was sort of like championing me if I would eat less. And my manager also, I had a manager, I had an agent. Oh yeah, no.
So you had this cycle going on for like, would you say like more than 10 years? Like, yeah, like a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, when did you first realize, okay, like this is like, because you mentioned how it was like normal, but when did you first realize, okay, this is not normal, like this is like, I need help?
Yeah, I think one of the big things was my Dutch friend, who I'm still, one of my best friends, Anne Marije. Shout out to Anne Marije. She, I was so tired from that cycle because again I was working so hard, studying, everything.
It sounds exhausting.
Exhausted. She was with me. She came from the Netherlands. She wanted to hang out with me, and I was literally just listening to her. Sitting in my room, talking music or whatever, and I just fell asleep in the daytime because I was kaput, done. And she was like, "What's going on with you?" And she was upset, like, "Am I boring you?" And then she became worried because she also saw, how. I mean, people never. So funny thing is, people would never say to me, "You're so skinny," right? I'm big boned. I have broad shoulders. I have hips. So
it's like they wouldn't expect you to have an eating disorder because of that.
They just thought, you're athletic, or even I was called even then at a size 4 with my height, I was called big.
Yeah.
So funny, big muscly girl.
Yeah.
If you think about it now, even if I look at pictures now, I had like 0 fat.
No, but that's like a big misconception too, as well. Though that like people expect like in media, eating disorders are portrayed as like women who are like very severely underweight, and it's like you can physically see that.
Yeah.
That's like how it's represented, and it's like hard for people to believe that somebody who could look just like you has an eating disorder.
Normal size. And I mean, only 6% of people with an eating disorder are severely overweight.
Exactly.
So can you imagine 94% of people with an eating disorder or disordered eating, you don't see it. So it wasn't visible because plus I was going to the gym. So she is the one who kind of was like, what is going on? And then I spoke about it with one of my other best friends who was going through the same. She's not going to mention her name. My lawyer friend. She had the same, and we opened up to each other because we noticed with each other the patterns of sneaking out.
How did you notice?
Sneaking out, disappearing from a party, coming late for dinner, or leaving early at dinner.
And when you're dealing with that, you're like, those are the details you're always paying attention to.
Yeah.
So it's like you notice when someone's like, yeah, I get that.
So we opened up to each other.
Wow.
We spoke about it together.
How did that start? Did you guys just one day just look at each other and were like, let's talk? Like,
I don't really remember how it opened up. If she was the one, because she's very perceptive. So it could be that she even opened it up to me. I was in serious denial. I'm very good, I'm very good at hiding things, very good at, lying if it's necessary. I'm not a good liar when it's, when I'm not supposed to lie, but if I can protect something or someone, I will lie.
And but when she opened up to you, or
she confronted me.
You felt like safe to tell her, or you were like still like denying a little bit?
No, I was so exhausted, so it was so nice I literally felt like how it must feel to maybe come out. I felt so relieved.
Yeah.
Just thinking now makes me want to cry, and I think we both cried, and I think we even binged together.
Wow.
And then said goodbye to each other because we both had to do our thing. Yeah. So it was very emotional, and that was the first step. And then I started to get real therapy for that.
I was gonna say,
specifically
yeah.
for that.
Did you guys like get help after that?
Yeah, it helped with. First was start reading. Janine Roth is a writer, and the book is Feeding the Hungry Heart. That is the first book that I read that is really open about binge eating from a woman's perspective, which is really important. That opened it up. That made me start thinking about it. And but I felt that, especially being bulimic, was my secret weapon, right? Because it kept me, quote unquote, it didn't make me I didn't gain weight. I was so afraid to gain weight. So I had to deal with the fact that, if I stop binging or if I stop throwing up, I may gain, of course I will gain weight. So that was a very big bridge to cross.
Right, which is interesting because, I also have a dear friend who has also a similar eating disorder. It wasn't as severe as with you, but also the binging and throwing up. And she explained too how, like, it's mainly about control, which surprised me to hear because, if anything, for an outsider point of view, it seems like you're being controlled by your eating disorder. But she said it's actually the only thing that makes you feel like you're in control and you're in charge because you have all this outside views and activity, and this is the one thing that you're in control of.
Yeah.
And also she explained how delusional it makes you. Like, if somebody would tell her, oh, like, I like the shirt you're wearing, that's such a cute shirt, she would hear that as, oh, I look skinnier in this shirt.
Yeah.
Like, everything just
Everything's
relates to
connected
that.
Everything relates to that. You think you're in control, and that dismantling that was the start of me of realizing, wait a minute, this has nothing to do with my weight, because I just want to be very clear, you don't lose weight from throwing up. You don't. First of all, you only, even if you think all your food comes out, doesn't. It's only like 20 or maybe 30%, right? So plus, if you look at all the amounts you've eaten, like, again, if I would eat 2 grocery bags full of food that could last something like 10 people at a party, approximately, that's a lot of food. So if you lose 30% of that, that's still 70% of those calories. So I had to dismantle that.
Yeah.
And I was lucky. What saved me, because I didn't have any money, I was a student working as a bartender, hardly had health insurance. By that point I had health insurance, but I got admitted into a research program. And the research program was therapy, and one group would get classic psychotherapy, and the other group got cognitive behavioral therapy. And I got into the cognitive behavioral therapy group, and I was upset because I wanted to do, psychotherapy.
Of course.
But that saved my life because I'm a very practical person. I'm a thinker. I'm somebody who likes to know, I'm a technical, practical thinker. And that really helped me because in cognitive behavioral therapy, you don't talk about your past. You don't talk about your childhood. You talk about your thoughts.
Yeah.
The thoughts you have, and you dismantle everything.
Yeah.
You dismantle your perceived knowledge. So I learned to dismantle, wait a minute, this is the amount of calories I eat. If I do this, which has such a horrible effect on my body, on my health, I'm lucky I still have teeth, my own teeth. How much do I really lose weight by that? So all dismantling, all those thoughts and
so
ideas,
it's kind of like seeing,
that saved me.
So you would say seeing the logistics and like actually basically getting like research on like what it's actually doing and just hearing that.
Not only hearing it, but working with it. So you have to write it down. And the good thing is because if I would have been at home, I wouldn't have done it. If I would go to therapy once a week, and then here you have a whole list questionnaire.
And you can
answer,
so easily
I would fake
not
it.
show up to therapy.
Not show up,
or
do it half, or I was busy. But because I had to go into that hospital 3-4 times a week and do all those questionnaires there.
In front of them.
Well, on the computer. So it forced me to do it. So I had to do the work. And that saved my life.
Wow. And
really saved my life.
I was wondering too, because I've had cognitive therapy and it's very like you forced to like practice and do exactly the things you're scared of so that you can get over that bump. I had it for anxiety. So you can get over that bump and like create a different pathway and a different connection with those actions.
Yes.
And we spoke also about control and the connection to OCD. So I'm wondering, were you at all practicing like instead focusing other things in your life that you can get control over? Or, like, did that help at all? Or
No,
you
it
don't
was
focus on control at all?
no, you don't focus on control. You dismantle the thoughts you have about food, and you dismantle the thoughts you have about body, and you dismantle the thoughts you have about society, and you learn that your life is worth it. And if I had to learn that if I want to be an actress, I will be an actress regardless of whatever body type I have. And I will defy society. That's where body politics comes. Your body is your body and it has to be celebrated. And if you celebrate your own body, you will find your own group and your own way of working that will celebrate you as well, also as an actress. And that was a very hard switch to make because we're learned by society, by media, by men, also by, unfortunately, by other women, by everything. Like, no, you have to be size 0. No, you're not attractive. No, you have to look this is your box, this is your box. And I had to break out of that box intellectually and practically by practicing.
No, yeah, I'm curious because...
So I had to come out. So I had to tell the boyfriend I had then, like, listen, this is me and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to eat whatever I want. And I may, hey, let's break up because I may gain whatever 100 pounds. And I had to tell my agent and I had to tell my manager.
They made you do the program?
No, but I made that decision myself. If I want to be an actress, I have to be an actress the way I am and not... Pretending or becoming even more skinny, because of course you're never skinny enough. Right?
Yeah.
So I had to learn all of that.
Like, to put it simply, I guess the process of you getting over it was like dismantling it. So basically that included like writing down your thoughts and saying them out loud and like admitting them, even if it's just like to a wall, which sounds super simple, but it's not for nothing that I have to do the same for anxiety. And I feel like with most mental problems, it works like that. And it's kind of like, I remember the first time my therapist told me that every time I have a thought like that, I need to write it down. And I remember being like, no, like, that's like cringy to write it down. And it's just like, and when I say them out loud, like I get embarrassed because it sounds ridiculous. And she was like, that's the point. Because you realize this is ridiculous. And you can look at it when you're not in that stage and see this is super like ridiculous. Yeah. So that's the point. Like, you're supposed to feel like cringe and weird doing it.
And forgive yourself, because then you also learn, why do I have this? Oh my God, this poor child, this poor girl, this poor woman.
Yeah.
And make you reflect on society, your life, your childhood. So of course more comes to play. So let's talk about that, because I think it's important now to get to what to do. Because if you're listening to this and you feel like, oh my God, I'm stuck, I want you to know, there's this, it's called like this cycle of dieting, right? You're unhappy about yourself, and that could be for all sorts of reasons. Society tells you, media tells you, maybe people who you loved, whatever. You hate yourself. Then you go on this diet. You think, oh, my life is going to change. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to do this. That's number 2. Then, of course, you deprive yourself. You're hungry. You're starving. You're unhappy. You feel physically unwell. You won't make that diet. Then you get into this horrible blame game of like, oh my God, I'm such a loser. I'm so terrible. I can't even diet. And you become unhappy and you hate yourself, and then you go on the diet again. So that's this horrible cycle that for different reasons, a lot of people, a lot of women, and a lot of women of color get into, which is often not diagnosed, but that is what's happening. Number 1, what you need to do, because I've had a lot of therapy. We should maybe do once a part 2, because we're not even there yet, because we haven't even spoken how it affected being a mom. So I'm telling you this from my experience. The first thing you need to do when this happens is come out to yourself and come out to other people, to explain a few people in your inner circle what's going on with you. I'm stuck, right? That's number 1. Because talking about it with someone you trust, with someone you love, somebody who really cares about you, who may go through the same thing, is very important. That's number 1. My second advice is always to start eating. Because you need food anyway. You will never you can never not eat. If you're an alcoholic, you can stop drinking, change your life and never drink alcohol again. You will always need to eat. And what's very important to keep your blood sugar on a decent level is to eat at least 5 times a day at minimum. Just like a small child, like you do with little children, 3 meals at least 2 snacks and maybe 2 snacks. So you have your breakfast, you have your mid-morning snack, you have your lunch, you have your mid-afternoon snack, you have your dinner, and you have your evening snack. If you do that, at least your blood sugar doesn't spike. Doesn't matter what you eat, don't think about what you eat. Eat what you want to eat. That's what Janine Roth says. So if you want to have dinner with ice cream, you have dinner with ice cream. But make sure it's dinner. You sit down at a table, you have a nice plate, you have your cutlery, and you break out your ice cream and you have dinner with your ice cream. And then your snack is maybe an apple or another cookie, or doesn't matter, but you do that. But you make sure those are meals that with a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's number 2, what I really want to suggest. What I also want to do is reading. Read books. I'm going to put a list in our show notes, but Janine Roth helped me so much. If you're a woman of color, read books from women of color. A book I can highly recommend from Roxane Gay is called Hunger. It's literally about being a woman of color, being a black woman, going through trauma and dealing with food and who you are. Of course, if you can afford it, please find therapy, and specific therapy that deals with eating disorder. And what helped me, of course, is body politics. Learning about being a body, a female body, a woman body, a black body in this space, in this difficult society. Learning about it will feed you, will give you anger. It will feed that hungry heart. It will feed that pain. And see your body as a form of protest. This is my body, and this is who I'm going to be. With this body, I'm going to take up this space. It's not easy, but it will help. And then what helped me too, you have to also look into that and speak to a health professional. What would help me, especially with those intrusive thoughts, because they kept going on and on, even when I stopped, because I stopped throwing up at a certain point, but I didn't stop binge eating. And what helped me was medication. I'm not talking about the semaglutide shots. I'm not doing that, but I'm taking, it's called atomoxetine, and it's medication that's used when people have ADHD and regular medication doesn't work. This medication helps with impulse control and with intrusive thoughts. And I started taking it during the pandemic because, of course, I was completely afraid I would go completely crazy during the pandemic with food. And I'm lucky, I know my privilege with a husband who's a psychiatrist who could just prescribe it to me. And now, after taking it for so many years, the thoughts are gone. So that's what I wanted to tell you. Maybe, externally you don't really see a big difference, but internally my thoughts are now my own. I'm not being bothered anymore by those thoughts, which is also a chemical thing. And you can also get rid of it through therapy, of course. But so many things happen in life that change your body, having children or not getting pregnant or whatever, or other trauma, growing up, change of life, puberty, but also, for me, going through menopause. So trauma keeps, it kept sucking me back in. But now at least those thoughts are gone, those crazy intrusive thoughts. So I just wanted to say, I wanted to tell you those things, explain those things.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I wanted to say as well, and maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think also a big thing is also finding peace, that there are certain things that you don't have control over with your body. Because I feel like in our family specifically, we all eat together, most of our meals, and we eat the same meals, and my dad always makes sure we eat meals with like all the nutrition we need. That's like, he's big on that.
He loves cooking.
Yeah. So we eat the same meals for years. But yet, if you look at me, my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, we all have completely different bodies. Yeah. Completely different.
All 5.
That shows that certain things are out of your control. And if you're eating the things you want to eat, you're eating in meals and you're happy, then that's good. That means you're healthy. You don't need to focus too much on the looks, because there is not one right way for a healthy body to look. Because everyone's body takes food in differently, and everyone's body works differently and looks differently.
But that's so difficult because society doesn't champion different bodies, right? Exactly. So that's where body politics keeps coming into play. You have to see yourself as, in that sense, as an activist to become healthy and be very proud of yourself. With your body. There's all sorts of different shapes of body, and we have to champion them. And as Lenin, as I've learned in the Soviet Union as a child, it only takes 10 people to have a revolution. So it is possible, it is possible. We can do this. We can do this.
And I also have a book that I want to shout out about specifically bulimia. which is a memoir, and the book is called, I'm pretty sure it's called I'm Glad My Mom Died. And we both read it together on vacation.
Incredible book. I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, a child actress. Fantastic.
Super famous. And that's what I think
Beautiful.
also made it good to know,
Yes.
because she was such a public figure.
Yeah.
She was in so many shows for people's childhood, people watching. So it's so good to see how hidden it was. Like all those years we were watching her grow up on TV. No idea until she came out with this. And that shows as well. Like it goes against all the stereotypes, because it's like we would have never known. And she gets very personal through her whole journey.
Amazing.
And it's like that book really made me understand it, and also helped me know how to communicate with my mom better as well.
Yeah.
Because it explains like everything you need to know. And again, instead of bothering somebody who's actually maybe still fighting it, you can inform yourself with a book like that instead, and know how to support if you know someone who's dealing with this instead.
I mean, we're definitely gonna do part 2, because we didn't even speak about
how it affected as a mom.
You as a mom,
and I have
you
so
as a
many
child.
things I want to talk about.
Yeah, we will talk about this more, but I think this is already a lot
of information.
So
but let's say next week we'll talk about,
or maybe in a few weeks, maybe not next week.
Yeah,
Let's see
sorry,
when.
However you feel.
Yes.
About how it affects your children growing up, how your children notice, also how it can affect friendships, relationships, and so basically more like how it affects relationships and those that are noticing it and seeing it, and also how we could potentially trigger things as kids, because that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Because
we're gonna talk about
next time.
Again, it's a huge topic. It's a topic for a lot of women, and we want to really thank you for listening to us. Please take care of yourself. Please always speak with everything you hear us, our opinions. Speak to a professional, please, if you can. Yeah, please. And as I always like to say, I love you, I love me, and I love all of you. We love all of you.